So let's start the session, right? So I'm Nandini and I'm going to discuss Indian Constitution. Okay, things that is getting implemented in India, like we have Forest Protection Act, Wildlife Act, Environment Protection Act, right? So we have to conserve the environment, and also there is Pollution Control Board for this. And then Article 50 means separation of judiciary from executive. So I gave you an example for this. For example, collectors and tahsildars and all, before the introduction of Criminal Procedure Code (CRPC), they used to do both the administrative work and also the judicial work. They will act as a quasi-judicial body. But after the introduction of the CRPC, Criminal Procedure Code, that judicial work has been taken from them and it is given to judicial magistrates. So now the judiciary and executive is totally separated. That is Article 50. Article 51, promote international peace and security. This is the one line that you have to remember here. 51 is to promote international peace and security. How we are doing that? We are following many policies like policy of non-alignment, punch shield policy, etc. Fine. So now we will discuss about fundamental duties. Is it previous session? Okay, fine. Previous session we saw that there are lots of fundamental rights that the state is providing us. Fine. So in return, we should also give something to the state, right? As a citizen, we should perform certain duties, right? So that is what we are going to study now. The fundamental duties, they are covered in part 4A in Article 51A. If there is 51A, B, C and all, it means it is introduced through an amendment. We know that, right? And it is borrowed from the Constitution of USSR. So this article has been introduced through which amendment? Here also 42nd Amendment Act of 1976 comes into picture. So already I told you 42nd Amendment Act is very important. Okay. So this introduced Article 51A in the Constitution, and it is recommended by Swaran Singh Committee. You just have to know it. You don't have to mug up with that. And originally there were only 10 duties when this 42nd Amendment Act of 1976 introduced this article. Later, one more duty was added through 86th Amendment Act of 2002. Okay, so we will just discuss what is what. That's it. You just here have to know fundamental duties means Article 51A through 42nd Amendment Act, and the 11th duty was added through 86th Amendment Act. Everything will be self-explanatory in this fundamental duties. First duty is to abide by the Constitution and respects its ideals and institutions, the national flag and the national anthem. So in theaters and all, they play national anthem before or after the movie, right? So that is example for that. And to cherish and follow the noble ideals which inspired our national struggle for freedom. So Anna Hazare, Operation Blue Star, etc. So I'm just giving you example. You don't have to remember each and everything of this. You just have to know whether it is a fundamental duty or not. Okay. And then to defend the country and render national service when called upon to do so. So during 1962 war, they asked volunteers for policemen. So that is the example of that. That is a duty a citizen has to perform. And then to promote harmony and spirit of brotherhood amongst all the people, to renounce practices derogatory to women. So MNS means Maharashtra Navnirman Sena. What he did is what they told us, they don't want North Indians in their Maharashtra's job. So that is actually not promoting brotherhood, right? It is against it. To value and preserve the rich heritage of our composite culture. Like we are preserving Taj Mahal, Red Fort, etc., right? But still pollution is damaging it, but still we are trying to preserve. And to uphold and protect the sovereignty, unity and integrity of India. So Ram Mandir issue is going on. Actually, that issue is degrading the unity between the Indians, right? Between the Muslim community and the Hindu community. So it is not good to do that. And then to protect, improve, and have compassion towards national environment, including forests, lakes, rivers, and wildlife. We have Environment Protection Act for this. And Tigress Avni is that Maharashtra, this tigress was killed actually. So it is against the protection of environment. So we should respect the wildlife also. And to develop scientific temper, humanism, and the spirit of inquiry and reform means we sent a mission to Mars and right to information. That is an example. To safeguard public property and to give up violence. So there was a mob fury by Shiv Sena who burned the public property and they were made to pay actually. Fine. And then to strive towards excellence in all spheres so that the nation constantly rises to higher levels of endeavor. So we are having many schemes like Make in India, Skill India, etc. Right? So these are the 10 duties. Apart from that, 11th duty was introduced by 86th Amendment Act of 2002. In our institute module also, please update this. There are only 10 duties there. This is the 11th duty, that a parent or guardian should provide opportunities for education of the child between the age of 6 and 14 years. Okay. So add this in your institute module also. Fine. Now answer this question. If some citizens don't perform fundamental duties, is it possible to file a case against them? Or is it justiciable? If I say that I won't sing national anthem, is there any law that can punish me actually? Are saying yes, actually the answer is no. So directly, if you don't perform the duty, fundamental duty, it is not in any law that the court can punish you. So, but there is a possibility that you can get punishment, like if there is a law made on that fundamental duty. If you don't perform that fundamental duty, fine, you won't get punished. But if there is a law made, for example, the first fundamental duty is to abide by the constitution and respect its idea, and then the institution, the national flag and the national anthem. For that, there was a law on that. Prevention of Insults to National Act 1971. Through this act, if you don't respect the national flag, you can be punished. But if the question is straight, like if fundamental duties are justiciable, if you don't follow the fundamental duties, can you be punished? The answer is no. But if there is an act made on that fundamental duty, then you can be punished. Okay, make this thing clear here. Fine. Any doubts? Fine. Fundamental duties is also over. Now let's discuss about our judiciary. Here we will discuss Supreme Court, High Court and subordinate courts. Okay. Before independence, our judicial structure was something like this, and then after independence, it was something like this. So before there was a federal court, and the appeal from that court goes to the British Privy Council. It was in Britain, but now after Jan 28, 1950, when Supreme Court was established, the hierarchy was like Supreme Court, High Court, subordinate court. Actually, from subordinate court, the appeal will go to High Court and then to Supreme Court. Okay. So this is the hierarchy: Supreme Court, High Court. So subordinate courts, you will have both civil courts and criminal courts. Let's discuss about Supreme Court. So you just have to know the overall view, because that is what is given in your module. So you don't have to know very much about Supreme Court, and you don't have to know all the articles regarding it. Okay, feel happy for that. This session won't contain that much articles. Till now we saw only one article, 51A, right? That is fundamental duty. Okay, Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is the highest court in the country. Okay, both for the ordinary laws and also for interpreting the constitution. So in Sabrimala issue, we saw that they gave the verdict based on Article 17, that is untouchability, right? So it interprets the constitution actually. And then it entertains appeals from the high courts. Of course, it is the highest court of appeal, right? So it entertains appeals from high court and also from tribunals in both cases, civil and criminal cases. And then it has writ jurisdiction for enforcing fundamental rights. We discussed these 5 writs in fundamental rights chapter, right? So it has that jurisdiction. And right now there is one chief justice and 33 judges. 34 judges are there totally in a Supreme Court. And then High Court, like the Supreme Court, which has the highest position at the central level overall India, High Court occupies the top position in the judicial administration of each and every state. Okay, at present there are 25 high courts in the country, and it has the control over the subordinate courts. Okay, and it also has writ jurisdiction. Those 5 writs we discussed in fundamental rights chapter. No, this High Court also has the right to issue such writs, and it can also review. It can also have judicial review. It can also review the laws made by the parliament or state legislature. Not parliament, basically parliament's law will be reviewed by Supreme Court. If that is state legislature, then it will be reviewed by High Court. Then subordinate courts. So subordinate courts, we have civil court and criminal court too. So civil court will deal with individual wrongs, for example, cases involving disputes, which mostly involves money, property, marriage, etc. Right? And then criminal cases means, for example, theft, robbery, murder, etc. And for civil cases, mostly you can't get arrested immediately. Mostly the guilty, however, has to compensate the victim for damage caused, which is usually monetary in nature. Whereas for criminal cases, you will be punished. So there will be punishment for this. So can anyone tell that why is the, okay, I will tell you why is the need for special tribunals. You tell me how many cases are pending in all these courts, Supreme Court, High Court and subordinate court. How many cases approximately will be pending there? Only because of those huge amount of pending cases, these special tribunals came into action for speedy delivery of justice. So how many cases do you think is pending with the subordinate courts? Okay, Sriram Priyanka said, Prakya, okay, he's saying that about 80 lakhs, okay. Any other answers? Okay. With Supreme Court, it's around 50 to, you are almost correct with Supreme and High Court. It's around 50 to 60 lakhs. With High Court, it is around 50. But with subordinate courts, it's around 3 crore cases. 2.9 something crore cases are pending. So that is why the number of judges also keeps on increasing. Okay. So that is why the special tribunals comes into action. They are like quasi-judicial bodies. Okay. So they generally deal with direct taxes, labor, customs, copyright, environment, etc. So examples for some special tribunals: National Green Tribunal, Securities Appellate Tribunal, Central Administrative Tribunal, etc. Right? Fine. So writ jurisdiction, we already discussed those 5 writs. Now we will look into the writ jurisdiction of High Court and Supreme Court. So this is the line here. The writ jurisdiction of the High Court is wider than that of Supreme Court. What does this mean? So writ jurisdiction of Supreme Court is under Article 32. For High Court, it is under Article 226. It means Supreme Court can issue writs only if your fundamental rights get violated, not for any other violation. Whereas High Court can issue writs for your fundamental right violation and also if there is any legal right violation. So that is why High Court has the wider jurisdiction on this writ. Okay. So Supreme Court, please remember this, Supreme Court has jurisdiction only on those matters regarding fundamental rights. High Court has jurisdiction on fundamental rights and also on legal rights. Okay. So we saw that only Supreme Court and High Court can issue writs, but Parliament under Article 32 can empower any other court, even a subordinate court, to issue writs. Okay. But there has been no such provision still now. So only Supreme Court and High Court can issue writs for now. But if Parliament thinks, it can empower some other courts also. Okay. So let's discuss about Parliament. Okay. Parliament in India means it consists of 3 things, or these three things: Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, and President. We know that Parliament has Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha. It consists of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. But President, he is not a member of both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Then how is he considered as the integral part of Parliament? Do anyone have idea about that? How can he be the integral part of Parliament? No answers? Everyone awake, right? Or he approves the order? Very good. Yes. Whatever, yeah, he would elect the members. Not exactly, but he approves the order. Fine. So whatever bill that is passed by Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha cannot become an act unless it is signed by President. President has to give his assent. So then only it will become an act. Fine. So that is why he is known as the integral part of Parliament. So Parliament has 3 things, not only Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, it also contains President. We will compare Parliament and President and we will complete this chapter. So like Parliament, state legislature also has 3 things: Legislative Assembly, Governor, Legislative Council. Legislative Assembly is also called as Vidhan Sabha or Lower House, and Legislative Council is also called as Vidhan Parishad or Upper House. Okay, and Governor is the integral part of state legislature. Okay, only 6 states have legislative councils in India. Before that, answer this question. Because Tamil Nadu right now don't have a legislative council. Update this in your module 2. Only these 6 states have legislative council as of now in India. Okay, not Tamil Nadu, not Madhya Pradesh. Only Here the option is B, Telangana. Okay. So these are the 6 states which have legislative council right now: Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Maharashtra, and Karnataka. Not Tamil Nadu. Okay. So update this in your module. Okay. It has Tamil Nadu and Madhya Pradesh also in that, I guess. So update it now. There is no legislative council for Tamil Nadu and Madhya Pradesh. Fine, clear. And then let's discuss about president. Okay, so I have given certain articles. You don't have to remember all those things. Only article 1, 2, 3 will be important to you, I guess. So president is the head of Indian state. What is the term of president in India? Term of office of president in India? 5 years. Yes, the term of office of president is 5 years. Can he be re-elected? How many times he can be re-elected? The answer for this is he can be re-elected n number of times. Unlike US president, he can be elected not more than twice to the office of president. Okay, so that is it. And what is the minimum age to become the president of India? One must have completed what age to become president of India? 35 years. Very good, Sridev. It is 35 years. So the president shall be elected by the members of an Sandra Sabu 35. Okay. Ekta Prasad 35. Okay, you are all right. The president shall be elected by the members of an electoral college consist of. Electoral college means nothing but a group of people who can take part in the election of president. Okay, that is called as electoral college. So president electoral college consists of elected members of both the houses, that is Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, and elected members of legislative assemblies of states and elected members of legislative assemblies of union territories of Delhi and Puducherry. So here make one thing clear that only elected members take part in the election of president. Okay, not nominated members. Okay, only elected members will take part. Fine. Like is governor. Like for the center, for the parliament there is president. For the state or for state legislature it is governor. Okay, both are same. Okay, so normally there shall be a governor for each state, but same person can be appointed as a governor for 2 or more states also. Okay, and unlike president who is elected through an electoral college, governor is not elected, rather he is appointed directly by the president. Okay, so pleasure of president means if the president want to remove the governor, he can remove him, but on the aid and advice of the council of ministers. Okay, so there is no special procedures to remove governor from his office. Fine. And then the head of executive power of the state is governor, just as the president of the union. That is what we discussed. Fine. Now let's compare president and governor and we'll see their powers. So Article 53 of the Constitution lays down that executive power of the union shall vest with the president, and Article 154 says that executive power of the state shall vest with the governor. So these are all the powers vested with president, and governor doesn't have two powers, that is military and diplomatic power. So executive power, what is that executive power? President appoints CAG, Prime Minister, etc. That is executive power. Military power, he is the supreme commander of our 3 forces, right? Legislative power, he summons the parliamentary sessions of the parliament, and also that is legislative. Judicial powers, president has the power to pardon any criminal who is convicted and he has to go under the death sentence. He can pardon even death sentence. Okay, and then financial powers, money bill can't be introduced in the parliament without his assent. So he has the financial power over that. And diplomatic powers means he represents India in the international forums and affairs, right? But governor doesn't hold this military power and diplomatic power. So basically you will know the difference, why he doesn't hold military and diplomatic powers, right? And then ordinance making power. What is this ordinance making power? So generally parliament will make laws, right? So usually the bill will generate from Lok Sabha, or the bill may even generate from Rajya Sabha and then go to Lok Sabha. So it can be either way. So both house must pass it, and then the president has to sign it, and then it will become an act. Fine. So what if the parliament is not in session? So the parliament is not in session, and there is certain very important thing on which a law has to be made. For example, recently President passed an ordinance to safeguard the health workers. So due to this pandemic situation, this COVID-19, what happened is many landlords evicted the health workers like doctors or any other health workers from their premises. to safeguard them, an ordinance was passed by not parliament, president. So president has this power to make laws on very urgent matters. That is ordinance making power. Fine, everyone clear on this? Usually parliament will make laws, but when parliament is not in session, president will make laws. That is the ordinance making power of president. So for president, it is given under Article 123, and for governor, it is given under Article 213. Okay. So that is what we discussed at times when it is not possible to have parliamentary enactment on a subject that is immediate. Fine. Okay, but both this governor and the president, they cannot act on their own. They cannot do whatever they want to do. They must act with the aid and advice of Council of Ministers. Okay, whatever president or governor does, they will sign it fine, but they won't take all the decisions. This Council of Ministers, along with the Prime Minister or Chief Minister, they will take the decisions, and it will be taken in the name of president. Okay, can you explain ordinance with example? That is what recently one ordinance was passed regarding I guess epidemic acts, or I don't know the name of ordinance. You just go and Google it. In that it was urgently passed because health workers has to be saved from certain discriminations, like the landlords, what they did was they evicted many doctors and many health workers from their houses. They are living in a rented house. They were evicted from the houses, and due to this COVID-19, because they are going to hospitals and they are coming back, and the landlords thought that they will also might get infected, but it is wrong, right? Doctors are doing their duty. In order to safeguard them, an ordinance was passed recently. So that is passed by president, not the parliament, because parliament was not there in session. Parliament will usually meet with between intervals, like once in 3 months, once in 6 months. There are certain limits. So parliament was not in session. So president made this ordinance, but with the aid and advice of Council of Ministers. Okay. Tanya, is that okay to you? That is the best example that was happening. You might have seen in news also. Recent ordinance was passed regarding this. Fine. So we saw the difference between president and governor. There is an exception of this ordinance making power of governor. So governor cannot make ordinances without the instructions from the president in 3 cases. What are these 3 cases? So there are certain bills in state legislature which for introduction itself wants the previous sanction from the president. In such cases, governor has to obey the president's order. He can't pass ordinance by himself. And then governor has the power to reserve any bill before he gives his assent, so that president will consider it. So if the governor has reserved any certain bills like that, in that also governor can't make ordinance without the president's permission. And then it is some cases are there, like some laws are there which needs both governor's assent and also president's assent. So in that case also governor should obey president's order. Fine. So these are the 3 exceptions. Now, what happens to such ordinances? So those ordinances which are made by the president or governor, it has to be laid before the parliament or state legislature when it reassembles. So it will become act only if both the houses approves it. Otherwise, it will automatically expire within 6 weeks. Okay. So whatever the ordinance that is made by governor or president, it has to be approved by the both houses of parliament or state legislature. Okay. Otherwise, it will automatically get expired. Fine, answer this now. If you have any doubt, post it. Otherwise, answer this question. The catch is Electoral College of President does not include. While discussing, we saw that Electoral College of President includes only elected members, not the nominated members. Only elected members of both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, and also the elected members of legislative assemblies of state and Delhi and Puducherry. So here D, what is Tanya D? No, not D. Nominated B. Look at option B, the nominated members of Rajya Sabha. So we didn't discuss that. So only elected members will elect president, not the nominated members. Now it is clear, right? Nominated members are not in that electoral college. Only elected members will be there. Okay, we saw president and governor. Now we will discuss about Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Exception once more, ma'am. governor exception, this one, right? So governor cannot make ordinances without the instruction of president. President can make ordinances on anything on which parliament can make a law, but governor cannot make ordinances on all the things. Okay, in certain cases he has to get the permission or instruction from the president. So these three cases are like, there are certain bills in state legislature which needs, if it contains any constitutional provisions or it contains anything that is in union list, in that and all, even president wants to approve it, then only it can be introduced in the state legislature itself. Not only governor, even president has to accept it. So that is the first case. Second case is governor, if he thinks that if any bill comes to him for this for signing, if he thinks that this bill has to be considered by the president because it contains some provisions relating to constitution itself, then he can reserve that bill. Okay, so reserve that bill for president's consideration. In such cases also, president has to say okay, otherwise he can't make ordinance. And also, certain acts in the parliament, state legislature, cannot become a law without the assent of even president. Usually in state legislature, if governor signs, it will become an act. But certain cases are there in which even president has to sign it. So in that cases also, governor can't make ordinance on his own. He has to get instruction from the president. Okay. So what are all the cases? We don't have to go that much deep into it, but basically these three exceptions. Okay, Lakshmi. Okay, fine. So you are clear with this, right? Only elected members and not the nominated members. Fine. Parliament. Now we will discuss about Lok Sabha and then Rajya Sabha. So this is the structure of Lok Sabha. So Constitution fixed the maximum number of Lok Sabha as 552. Okay, right now 445 seats are filled. Among them, 2 seats are reserved for, or the president will nominate for, Anglo-Indian community. But there is a slight change here. I will explain it to you in amendments chapter. Okay, now just read it like this: 2 seats for Anglo-Indian community nominated by president, and 543 seats they are elected by people. 530 for states and 13 for union territories. Okay, so mostly Lok Sabha will be filled with ruling party. Ruling party will have majority there. So its term is 5 years. And what is the minimum age, or what is the age to become a member of Lok Sabha? You should have completed this much age to make a member of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, right? What is the age limit for Lok Sabha? Sridevyam, you have answered right. It is 25 years. Okay, so 25 years for Lok Sabha. This is what we have been discussing. So usually Lok Sabha, people will choose them, the representatives, by direct election. So adult suffrage means if we are above 18 years of age, we can take part in voting. Fine. And this is what we discussed now. Maximum strength is 552, and among them 530 and 20 from union territories, and they're not more than 2 members for Anglo-Indian community, only if they are not adequately represented. It is not much to nominate 2 Anglo-Indian community. It is only if they think that that community is not adequately represented in the house. Okay, and basically the membership is divided based on population of each state. Okay, the seats will be allotted based on population. Okay, then Rajya Sabha. The term of Rajya Sabha here is 6 years, but this is a continuing chamber. So like after 5 years, whole Lok Sabha will dissolve, but Rajya Sabha won't dissolve. For every 2 years, 1/3 of its member will retire, and that seats will be filled through indirect election. Okay. So Constitution fixed the maximum strength of Rajya Sabha at 250. So you please try to remember this 552, this 250, and those numbers and all. Okay. This might come in your questions. And right now 245 seats are filled and 12 members are nominated by president here. So 12 members are nominated on these 4 cases: special knowledge or practical experience in literature, science, art, and social service. So 12 members are nominated by president through this. Okay, 233 members elected by legislative members of different states and union territories. Okay, so first para we discussed right now only. And then the allocation of seats for Rajya Sabha, it is given in 4th schedule of the constitution. It is given in 4th schedule. Basically, it is also based on population, but how seats should be allocated in Rajya Sabha for various states is specifically mentioned in 4th schedule of the constitution. Okay. And then there Lok Sabha we saw that it is direct election, but the member of Rajya Sabha, who elects the members of Rajya Sabha? The MLAs will elect actually. So they will elect through indirect election, that is proportional representation by means of single transferable vote. In this you will be given a list. In that there will be many names, members of state assembly. Very good. Yes, right. There will be many names, and the MLAs will actually give their preferences. Based on the preferences, they will be elected. You just have to know this. Not if we go very deep into this proportional representation by means of single transferable vote, it is really a lengthy topic. Just have to know for Rajya Sabha it is proportional representation by means of single transferable vote. And here it is open ballot system. In direct election, it is not a must that we should show to others that to whom we are voting, but here it is open ballot. Okay. Council of Ministers. Okay, so everyone knows the difference between MPs, MLAs, and ministers, right? If you don't know, just say no, so that I will explain that and I will go into this. Otherwise, I will straight away go into this. Difference between MPs, MLAs, and ministers. So some are saying no. Fine. MLAs means member of Legislative Assembly. So for state, there is Legislative Assembly, right? So we will vote and we will select a member of Legislative Assembly and we will send them to legislature, state legislature. Though they are MLAs, member of Legislative Assembly, and MPs means member of Parliament. So member of Parliament, here we will vote and select them and we will send them to Lok Sabha. They are also member of Parliament, that is MPs, and also the members of Rajya Sabha who are elected through indirect election. They are also MPs, member of Parliament. So Parliament has both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, right? So both the members of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha are called MPs, that is member of Parliament. Fine. Among these members, around not more than 50% are selected and they are made as Council of Ministers. Council of Ministers means these ministers will be given certain portfolios or very important ministries to handle. So that is Council of Ministers. Okay. So that shall be a council of ministers with the prime minister at the head to aid and advise president. We saw that president and government cannot act on their own. They must act according to the aid and advice of council of ministers and prime minister at the center and chief minister and council of minister at the state, right? So that is what is given here. So only 15%, not more than 15%. Okay, that is what is given in third paragraph. Second one, the prime minister shall be appointed by the president. Of course, prime minister is appointed by president, and other ministers are also appointed by president, but on the advice of prime minister. Prime minister will advise, like you appoint him or appoint that guy or this woman as a president. Sorry, as a minister. Sorry for that. The ministers shall hold office at the pleasure of president. Basically, pleasure of president means if a president wants to remove someone from the office, he can directly remove it. There is no procedure to be followed. That is pleasure of president. Okay. So he should do that only on the advice of prime minister here also. And this is a very important line. Council of Ministers shall be collectively responsible to only Lok Sabha, not the whole parliament. Only Lok Sabha, they are responsible. Council of Ministers shall be collectively responsible to Lok Sabha only, because the question might be tricky here. They may even give you option as Parliament or Rajya Sabha. Here only Lok Sabha. Fine. And the salaries and allowances of ministers, everything will be in the second schedule, or it will be mentioned by the Parliament. Justice magistrate, judicial magistrate, I said actually. So judicial, he will look about in a district there will be judicial magistrate. He will look about the judicial, like in a court we will have judges, right? So likewise in districts also there will be judicial magistrate. That's it. If we go very deep into it, we will have to see court of sessions judge, criminal, everything we have to see. So judicial magistrate means when judiciary and executive was divided, the judicial part was given to judicial magistrate. It is for districts. And then state legislature. So it has state legislative assembly, council, and then governor. So here, so like parliament, here also there is president, here there is governor. And in state of Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, Karnataka, Maharashtra, Telangana, Uttar Pradesh, these 6 states have 2 houses. We discussed, right? And other states there will be only one house. Where there is one house, it is called as legislative assembly, and where there are two houses, it is called legislative council, and the other one is called legislative assembly. Fine. Composition of this house. So the legislative assembly shall not consist of more than 50. Here the upper and lower limits are given. So not more than 500 and not less than 60 members. Okay. This is also chosen by direct election. And the total number of members of legislative council of a state having such a council, here, if for example legislative assembly there are 100 members, for legislative council it shall not exceed more than 33%, like that, 1/3. Fine. So if there are 300 members in legislative assembly, only 100 can be here in legislative council. So it shall not exceed 1/3 of total members of the legislative assembly. And the lower limit is given here as not less than 40. Fine. And term. Legislative assembly like Lok Sabha 5 years, and legislative council like Rajya Sabha, it is also a continuing chamber, it is 6 years, and every 2 years 1/3 will retire and the 1/3 will fill the post, other 1/3 through indirect election. Fine. This is how our state legislature and parliament will look like actually. Fine. Any doubts in this parliament chapter? If not, answer this please. Okay. Lok Sabha. Okay. Lok Sabha, it is 552. What about the answer for the second question? 2B, Lok Sabha. You are clear with this, right? Council of Ministers are not responsible for the whole parliament. They are responsible only for Lok Sabha. Fine. You shouldn't forget this because there is more possibility that the question might come from this thing. Okay. This is the final chapter. So if we complete this amendments, the class is over. It will take around 15 to 20 minutes, maybe maximum 15 to 20 minutes. So amendments. What is the need for amendment? First of all, our constitution makers made a constitution, and they also provided for the procedure for amending the constitution. Did they think that whatever they wrote in the constitution is not enough or it is not good? Why did they added this amendment procedure also? So anything that has to survive for a very longer period, it must be open to change, right? If it is not open to change, it won't survive this longer. Our constitution has survived for around 70 years, right? How is it possible? Because through this amendment. So as the time changes, the needs, necessities, and even the thinking, everything changes, right? So when the thinking and the needs of the people changes, that should also be provision in the constitution to include it or to remove something from the constitution which is outdated, right? That is why amendment comes into picture. So Article 368 in Part 22 of the Constitution deals with the power of Parliament to amend the Constitution and its procedures. So state legislature cannot amend the Constitution, only Parliament will amend the Constitution. Okay. So amending means it can add new articles or schedules or parts. Variation means it can replace something in the some specific article with some other subject matter. And repeal means, like, very good example for this is Article 31, which has been repealed from our Constitution. Right to property, right? So it has been repealed from our Constitution. That is through an amendment. But however, Parliament cannot amend those provisions which form the basic structure of the Constitution. What is this basic structure? So Parliament can do anything, but it cannot amend the basic structure. For example, equality, sovereignty of India, parliamentary form, and what else? There are various basic structures. There is a very huge list. For example, the secular is also a basic structure. If Parliament, through its powers, it makes our country an Islamic state or Hinduistic state, is it possible? It is not possible because it is one of the basic structure. So if Parliament amends that basic structure, whole country will collapse, right? So even though Parliament can amend anything in the Constitution, it cannot amend the basic structure of the Constitution. So this is the actual meaning of basic structure. Everyone clear? Equality is also basic structure. Secularism, sovereignty of India, everything is a basic structure. There is a huge list. You can go and refer actually. Fine. Neha Soni, yes, ma'am. Okay, thank you. And then we will now discuss about important constitutional amendments. There are around 1 or 4 amendments made to our constitution, but we are going to discuss only around 10 or 12 amendments here from 1951 to 2019, but 2020 also there is an amendment. We will discuss that. So first amendment. So ninth schedule was added through first amendment. What is this ninth schedule? So our constitution came into force around 1950, right? So when our constitution came into force and our country became independent newly, there was a need to bring social and economic equality in the country. So basically at that time, zamindari system was prevailing. So concentration of wealth was there with certain person, and there were lots of landless laborers. So whenever government tries to distribute those land, people start challenging it constitutionally, telling that you are trying to take away our land and you are trying to give it to someone else. We already saw right to property was fundamental right. So they challenged it through it. Like you can't take away my fundamental right. So in order to bring such acts, through this First Amendment Act, they introduced new schedule, that is ninth schedule. So whatever act that is made by the parliament is kept under this ninth schedule. It is not open to judicial review, nor the people cannot challenge it constitutionally. So whatever acts are under ninth schedule, people can't challenge it constitutionally. So through this, they bought Zamindari Abolition Act and Land Reform Acts also. That is why this ninth schedule was introduced. Okay. And then in fundamental rights, we saw that there are 8 grounds of restriction, reasonable restrictions, right? Previously, there were only 6 grounds of restriction. These 3 grounds were also added by First Amendment Act. Public order, friendly relation with foreign state, incitement to an offense. These 3 were added, and also it made the restrictions reasonable. If the government wants to restrict the person, the restriction must be reasonable. It can't be arbitrary. Government can't do anything it wants. It must be reasonable. That is also added by First Amendment Act. And then socially and economically backward classes. We saw that there are special provisions for socially and economically backward classes of people, right? So that is also added to First Amendment. Fine. Then Second Amendment. So it readjusted the scale of representation in the Lok Sabha by providing that the one member could represent even more than 7,50,000 persons. Previously, one member can only represent 7,50,000 persons. Okay, so the the population was increasing, so this limit was actually withdrawn. So now one member can represent even more than 7,50,000 persons. So this was added through Second Amendment Act of 1952. So this is a very important amendment. I have been telling you this from the beginning of the session itself. It is 42nd Amendment Act of 1976. So I am sure that there will be a question from this. Okay. So please concentrate here. It is also called as mini constitution because it did too much of changes to the constitution. It added too many articles and it actually added too many provisions also. That is only it is called as mini constitution itself. Okay. It was actually based on the recommendations of Swaran Singh Committee. You don't have to remember this committee, but remember that 42nd Amendment Act is also called as mini constitution. So it added 3 new words. In preamble chapter, we saw that, right? 3 new words were added to the preamble: socialist, secular, and integrity. That was added through 42nd Amendment. And then there was a new fundamental duty. The new part 4A was added, right? That is also through 42nd Amendment Act. It added a new article 51A, fundamental duties. Sorry, I was talking about fundamental duties. So 51A was also added through 42nd Amendment Act. And it also added 3 DPSPs, that is Directive Principles of State Policy. Equal justice and free legal aid, which is under 39A. Participation of workers in the management of industries, that is 43A. And protection of environment, forest and wildlife, 48A. So it did all these things, and also it added these 3 also. It shifted 5 subjects from state list to concurrent list. So there are 3 lists: union list, state list, concurrent list. In union list, only center is allowed to make laws. In state list, the states are allowed to make laws. In concurrent list, both state and union can make laws. Okay, so it's actually shifted 5 subjects from state list to concurrent list. Means previously states were only allowed to make laws on them, but now even center can make laws on them. What are those 5 subjects? Education, forest, protection of wild animals and birds, weights and measures, and administration of justice, constitution and organization of all courts except the Supreme Court and High Court. Just remember these 5 subjects, okay? and it empowered the center to deploy its armed forces in state to deal with grave situation of law and order. This is actually military rule or martial law. We saw in fundamental rights chapter, if there is a grave danger or grave situation in any state, center can deploy the armed forces. Okay, that is given through this 42nd amendment, and it also made the president bound by the advice of cabinet. It means previously president had his own discretion, but after that, whatever president does, he has to obey the orders of cabinet, that is council of ministers and prime minister. So after this amendment only this has happened. Actually president, if we think he is more powerful, actually theoretically if we see he has more powers and all, but actually he doesn't do anything on his discretion. He just signs whatever the council of ministers asks him to do. So who is really more powerful is prime minister and the ruling party actually, not the president. It is actually practical thing. So president will only do whatever they ask him to do. Fine. 52nd Amendment Act of 1985, it actually added a new schedule, 10th schedule. So in 10th schedule, it is also known as anti-defection law. So what happens is if a person is elected in one party, after getting elected, he will resign that and he will go to next party. And sometimes a group of people will resign so that the ruling party who is about to take in charge, they will lose majority. This was happening in our country for a very long time. In order to stop that and in order to disqualify such persons, this anti-defection law was introduced. Okay, so that is introduced through 52nd Amendment Act of 1985. 61st Amendment Act of 1989. So it reduced the voting age from 21 to 18 years. So previously, if we have completed 21 years, then only we can vote. Now we can vote if we have completed 18 years of age. And then 69 Amendment Act of 1991, it accorded special status to Union Territory of Delhi by designating it as National Capital Territory of Delhi. By designating it as National Capital Territory of Delhi, it also created State Assembly and also Council of Ministers of the State also. Okay, so 69th Amendment Act created a State Assembly for Delhi also. And then 70th Amendment Act of 1992. It provided for the inclusion of members of legislative assemblies of National Capital Territory of Delhi and Union Territory of Puducherry. In President chapter, we saw that the Electoral College of President consists of elected members of both houses of the Parliament and elected members of State Legislative Assembly and also elected members of Delhi and Puducherry, right? So that third option was actually added through 70th Amendment Act of 1992. Before that, only those two will elect, not this state legislative assemblies of Delhi and Puducherry. Okay, that was added through 70th Amendment Act. And the 84th Amendment Act of 2001. The number of seats in Lok Sabha and the assemblies are to remain same till 2026. So number of seats will not be increased hereafter till 2026 is introduced through 84th Amendment Act. Why was this done actually? Do anyone have any idea? So basically number of seats are allocated based on population, but this amendment shows that and said that only this number of seats will be in Lok Sabha till 2026 and not more than that. Somewhat boring, but just try to understand the concept, that is enough. No idea? Okay, fine. Actually, this is for someone, okay, no idea. This is for the population limiting measures. If a state has been said that based on the population, I will allocate, if there is 100 people, I will allocate 1 seat for you. Then the state will think that, okay, if there is 1000 people, they will give us 10 seats, right? So what will they do? They won't do anything to control the population. Rather, they will actually let the population expand, right? So in order to control the population, this was done. 84th Amendment Act of 2001, it froze the number of seats in Lok Sabha and assemblies. Fine. This is for population limiting measures. Answer this now. Which amendment is also called as mini constitution? Very easy, because I have been telling this from the beginning. 86th Amendment Act of 2002. These three are interlinked actually. In DPSP, there was an Article 45. From that, it actually previously it read like state should provide free and compulsory education for children till the age of 14 years. Now it reads only till the age of 6 years. Where did that 6 years to 14 years gone? It was taken from the DPSP and it was added in this fundamental right as Article 21A. So now the Article 21 says that the state shall provide free and compulsory education to all children of the age of 6 to 14 years. When something is taken from DPSP and it is added in fundamental right, it is a must for the central government or the state government to implement it. But when it is in DPSP, it is on the discretion of the state, right? So it made right to education as a fundamental right through Article 21A. And also it added a new fundamental duty. That is Article 51A, it added a 11th duty, like it shall be the duty of every citizen of India who is a parent or guardian to provide opportunity for education to his child or what between this age of 6 and 14 years. So it also added a new duty for the citizen. Fine. So these three are interlinked. And the 91st Amendment Act of 2003. The total number of ministers, including the Prime Minister and the Central Council of Ministers, shall not exceed 15% of the total strength of Lok Sabha. This is what we discussed in Council of Ministers chapter, right, and Parliament chapter. So the limit was actually decided in this 91st Amendment Act that it shall not exceed 15%. Likewise, in the State Legislative Assembly also, it shall not exceed 15%. And also, it told that in a state, it shall not be less than 12. So the number of ministers shall not be less than 12 in state governments, I mean state legislators, fine. And one more thing this 91st Amendment Act did, what is it? We saw 10th schedule, right? 10th schedule was added through this 52nd Amendment Act of 1985. In that, there were various exceptions in that 10th schedule. This 91st Amendment Act actually told that if in a party, 1/3 of members resigns and joins another party, it won't be considered as disqualification previously. But after this introduction of 91st Amendment Act, if 1/3 of the person from one party resigns and joins another party, they will all be disqualified. So that is given under the 91st Amendment Act of 2003. Only 4 amendments are balanced, so let's discuss that. 101 Amendment Act of 2006. So this is very important to you, I guess, because it introduced GST. So goods and services tax commenced with the enactment of 101 Amendment Act of 2016. So it actually added 246A, 269A and 279A articles to the constitution. And it also amended the 7th schedule. What does this 7th schedule contain? It contains union list, state list and concurrent list. So we already discussed, like in union list only central will have the power to make laws, and state list state will have powers to make laws, and in concurrent list both can make laws. So it also amended or also made changes in those schedule also. Some things from some subjects from state list is moved to concurrent list. So many things are done there based on this GST. Fine. And then 102nd Amendment Act of 2018. Previously, National Commission of Backward Classes doesn't have a constitutional status. It was not in the constitution book. Now, constitutional status was given to National Commission for Backward Classes. It inserted a new article 342A, and this article actually empowers the president to notify the list of social and educationally backward classes. So there will be social and educationally backward classes in every states and union territories. So the list of notifying them as socially and educationally backward classes was done by president. It empowered the president. And then 103rd Amendment Act of 2019. So this was the latest. We discussed this in Fundamental Rights chapter. Article 15 clause 6 and 16 clause 6. It actually provided for the advancement of economically weaker section with a ceiling of 10%, right? In government jobs, college and all. That was added through this 103rd Amendment Act of 2019. So that's it about the amendments. This is the final amendment because current affairs is also in your syllabus. I am telling you this. So this is the last amendment we are going to discuss, which was introduced this year. 104th Amendment Act of 2020. Please update this in your institute module also. So the reservation of seats for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes was set to expire on 26 January 2020. But this act amendment extended it. Usually the provisions that we give for scheduled caste, scheduled tribes and all, it will be valid only for 10 years. Or after every 10 years, the parliament has to make laws and it has to extend it for next 10 years only if it thinks that they are not adequately represented. So it expired on January 2020. So this amendment actually extended it. But here it also done another important thing is that we studied in Lok Sabha chapter, right? In that, President will nominate 2 members of Anglo-Indian community to Lok Sabha, right? That was abolished now. That was not extended. That was abolished now by 104th Amendment Act of 2020. So we saw this, right? In that, I didn't told you that it was abolished. I told you that there is a change in this, right? So this 104th Amendment Act actually did this. No, right now there is no nomination for Anglo-Indian community in Lok Sabha. So President do not has to nominate 2 Anglo-Indians in that. This is what 104th Amendment Act of 2020 did. Fine. So update this in your module. Fine. That is it. We actually completed Indian Constitution. Still some more time is there. If you have any doubt, ask. Last slide. This one. Oh, you want to write it? Okay, you write it. I will give you a minute to copy this. Update in your module. And also there are some other changes that you have to update in your module. I will tell you what it is. If you have, everyone have your module with you. Page number 19. Regarding directive principles of state policy, in page number 19, look at the law, article 45. Look at article 45. There is a change, like it is updated. Now it is not up to the age of 14 years, it's only up to the age of 6 years. So provide early childhood care and education for all children until they complete the age of 6 years. This is right now in article 45. So update it, because this article 45 was modified by 86th Amendment Act. For article 45, right? Provide early childhood care. Wait, I will show you that. The first one, Article 45 DPSP, the state shall endeavour to provide early childhood care and education for all children until they complete the age of 6 years. So copy that first one, then under Article 45. We'll move to the next one. Fine. And then move to page number 25. Constitution of legislators in state, right? There also update this. The first option, the states, I told you 6 states, right? Only those 6 states have legislative council. So update that also. There is no Tamil Nadu there now in that flowchart and not Madhya Pradesh. Add Telangana there. If you are done, fine. Only these 6 states have legislative councils right now. Update it. So we discussed everything, right? So from your exam perspective, you should know how to remember everything rather than knowing the provisions of it and understanding everything. The main problem comes when you give an attempt in exam. Fine. So while you are attending an exam, you will get confused between Article 5, Article 12 and all. So first thing you have to do is you should segregate like this and study. Citizenship means it will come between 5 to 11. We saw one slide, right? And fundamental rights means it should be between 12 and 35, and DPSP 36 to 51, and fundamental duties. For this, this is a universal trick actually. You remember this by this. You can fly directly from United States. Remember this so that in your exam, if you have a doubt, you just write it. So U means Union and its territory. That is not for your syllabus. That is 1 to 4. And then citizenship, C for citizenship, F for fundamental rights. So if you remember like this, you can, if there is a rough sheet or if you can do something like that, you can just write it and you will at least eliminate other options. So if something regarding fundamental rights is a question to you, And in options, there is Article 36 and Article 52. You can automatically eliminate those two, and you will know that if it is fundamental rights, it should be between 12 and 35, right? Try to remember articles like this. Otherwise, if you ask me, I will also say constitutional stuff. It is interesting because we will get to know many things, but remembering the articles is the toughest part in constitution. Okay, so this is a universal trick. Everyone will know. Just remember this. Fine. Any doubts? Then we completed discussing constitution. Is there any doubts? Please post it. Everyone is clear? Whenever studying constitution, please remember the articles with some tricks, okay? So that is the case, and thank you and all the very best for your exam, okay? So remember all the tricks we discussed, fine? Thank you.